विद्महे सत्यदेवाय धीमहि तन्नः सर्वः प्रचोदयात्। ॐ साईश्वराय 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 विद्महे सत्यदेवाय धीमहि तन्नः सर्वः प्रचोदयात्। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः।
Om Sri Sai Ram, dear brothers and sisters of the Sai family in Australia, New Zealand, Fiji and globally. Offering my humble pranams at the divine lotus feet of our beloved Bhagavan Sri Sathya Sai Baba. Welcome to our online ladies devotional offering which takes place on the 19th of each month. Let us begin by acknowledging the First Nations people in Australia, upon whose land we meet. We pay our respects to the elders, past, present and emerging. We also acknowledge the traditional elders in New Zealand and Fiji. With us here this evening, we have sisters Shanthini Gnanakaran and Sathya Dharmini Gnanakaran sharing their experiences on the topic at his feet by his will. Sister Shanthini Gnanakaran is a lawyer by profession, and after serving as a legal officer in both the state and Commonwealth Attorney General Department, Sister established her private law practice for about 35 years and continues to practice. Sister was truly blessed to have come to Swami at a very young age and was fortunate to attend the very first overseas Balavikas teachers training and received a certificate from his divine hands. Sister Shanthini served as a Balavikas teacher for several years and had held various positions in the organizations, including Education Coordinator, Center Chairperson, Center and National Ladies Coordinator, and Deputy Chair of the Central Council of Australia and Papua New Guinea. Sister Dharmini, daughter of Sister Shanthini, is also a lawyer by profession and works as a director for Australia and New Zealand in a company called Talent Beyond Boundaries. Dharmini grew up attending Balavikas from a very young age and soon became a bhajan singer and harmonium player. She is a Carnatic singer and completed her vocal arangetram in 1994. Dharmini has also been a part of youth adult Prasanthi pilgrimage and has been blessed with interviews with Swami. Please join me in welcoming Sister Shanthini Gnanakaran and Sathya Dharmini Gnanakaran. Sai Ram.
Sai Ram. Sai Ram to everyone. Humble pranams to the feet of Swami. And we commence the year 2022 speaking about Swami, which is the beautiful thing. And it's a privilege in the sense that you don't get so many opportunities to talk about him and your experiences only. So in this instance, my daughter and I are really privileged to talk about Swami and share the beautiful living moments we had over 50 years of our life, of my life. A 17 or an 18-year-old girl went for a walk as usual with her father one day. And she was walking to the temple as usual, the usual route. Both of them were walking up, went to the temple early in the morning, and then was about to walk back home. When we were about to exit the temple, there was a beautiful large tree under which there was a saintly looking person sitting there and beckoning us. So we looked at in awe, and then we walked up to him, and he inquired about us first, and then he said, "There is an ashram nearby. Do you want to come with us? Come with me? Do you want to come and see the place?" So we couldn't say no in any case. So we went to the ashram. And there were all Swami's pictures in the ashram, nothing else. Swami in different forms, Swami in different sizes, a lot of pictures there. That was the first time I was seeing Swami. At least the girl was seeing Swami. And we got attached to the place without knowing who Swami was. And one of the days when I went there was a photograph from which there was milk coming out in glowing colors, and also it was coming out in a way where it was out of the picture. Then in awe and also shocked and surprised, I called the Swami who was inside in his private chambers. I called, "Swami, Swami." And then he came out and said, "What is it?" He said, "Look." I said, look at that photograph. There's milk coming out of it." So he said, "Is that so?" And he called people who were working in the farm. The ashram was surrounded by people in a farm. It's a farmland, I think. He called everyone who was working in the farm, and he said, come and have a look. And they all came. There are about, say, 7, 8, 9, 10 people. So they're all younger generation too. So all of them came, looked at the picture and said, no, Swami, nothing. He said, huh. And he said, he beckoned, he told all of them to go away and said, it's just for her today. And the whole thing. Now, you can see Swami had come into my life. The first encounter, if you want to call encounter, the beautiful Swami reached out to me when I was 17 or 18 years of age. Now he has come. You would have heard a lot of experiences from devotees everywhere. So many YouTube videos you would have watched. Everyone is unique. Everyone is special. And one is not like the other. That's the beauty of Swami. He comes into your life. You can't explain a rhyme or reason for this as to how he reaches out to you and to whom. So what does he do as soon as he comes? There is a seed sown there, and I'll go fast forward in this. I tumble on Howard Murphy's book. I tumble on Satyam Sivam Sundaram, which were not very popularly available at the time, rarely. And I know when I used to read Howard Murphy's, I used to tear. And these things cannot be explained how it happened. So when we go forward, my marriage was fixed. And we were, the marriage party set off with the arrangements. The marriage was going to be in Meenakshi Amman temple. Now when the party was planning the trip, I was insisting, because I had read these books and I saw things about Swami materializing Thali, Swami blessing the Thali, all these, I was in a dreamland. So I said, we should go to Puttaparthi before we go to the marriage hall. That's Meenakshi Amman temple. So no one was interested. No one was interested at all. But I got my way at the end of it. And they said, all right, we'll go to the so-called place at Puttaparthi. So the marriage party made a trip to Puttaparthi. We went and landed there at about 9:30 in the night. And to my utter dismay, Swami was not there. My dream shattered. I thought Swami would have been waiting for me, bless my thali. Nothing happened. So we were hushed into a room. We were given food. They knew this was a marriage party. And we left Puttaparthi in the morning, that was early morning, to Madurai. Now, you'll see the significance of what I'm saying now. There's nothing significant at all at the time. So we move on, we get married, and then for 5 years we didn't have children. So there was another Swami, there has been a few Swamis in our lives, suggested that Swami Krishnananda. He suggested, why don't you go to Sai Baba? So though it was not bothering us about not having a child, because it was just 5 years there then, we made it an excuse to make a trip to Puttaparthi. So that was the first time my husband and myself made a trip to Puttaparthi. When we went there, we were called for an interview. I'm cutting things short. So we were called for an interview. We were called in, and Swami, first thing he did as soon as I got in, I completely forgot about the marriage party, how I wanted the thali blessed, nothing was in my mind. He called us and there was a lady right in front of me, had come with a marriage thing, and they were getting the thali blessed. As soon as I saw that, I moved forward. Swami was saying things, and I moved forward, and I showed my thali. I brought the thali and presented it to him, and he blessed it completely. Put his hand around and blessed it. I couldn't expect more. And then he said, "Come in," and I sat there. He gave a bag of vibhuti packets, a lot of them in one bag, and gave it to me and said, "Kuttiyathu kinva," in Tamil. That means, carry the child and come. At that time, we didn't know in Telugu or the language that Swami spoke that Kuti means girl. We didn't know that. So I took it as carry the child and come. So and the thali was so significant. When I came out, I thought, my God, the smallest wish years ago that I was yearning for as a girl was fulfilled on that day. So we came back home. So what happened after that was Swami is going to steer the ship of our career. Now I had just completed my law school, and I got into tutelage of the then famous Queen's Counsel, with whom I was involved in really famous cases like trial at bar and a lot of other cases which were in the newspapers every day. So I'm building this up for a reason. So, and my husband was in the state prosecuting. He was a state counsel, and we had this thing all set up for a political career, for a legal career. Everything looked so beautiful and promising for a young couple, without having any idea of the whole thing going into a wastebasket in 2 years. As you know, when the country became a civil war stunt. We didn't know all that then. So we were all building upon this, and then we were on that path, while now we are being churned to get out of the country. We would have been finished if we were there with all the dreams. So my husband, who was defending people who were shooting in the riots and people who killed, he had to go and defend them because he was with the state. So he started getting restless. He said, "No, I'm not happy doing all this. The people who died, they are crying and that sort of thing. I have to find a way out." So we thought, both of us, all right, we'll go overseas, postgraduate, we'll qualify ourselves, come back, and then realize our dreams, within inverted commas. So that was the plan of this couple. We traveled to Australia with all these dreams in our minds. Landed in Australia, guess what? Landed at a Sai devotee's house. And what did the Sai devotee do? Didn't take us on a trip looking at the country, looking at the beauties, the parties, all the hullabaloos we have when you go overseas. She took us straight to at that time in Australia, in Sydney, there was no city, there was no centre. There was a prayer meeting which was held regularly. We went and landed there, and it became a regular thing. Now we are forgetting about the dreams and everything. We are getting involved in the bhajans and the centre formation. There was a centre formed, Strathfield Centre at the time. The centre was formed. We got involved in. And you can see how the ship was steered in our favor, avoiding disaster. We got into Swami completely. In the centre formation, we were involved in study classes, balvikas, bhajan, all the time, 24/7. That was the whole focus was on. Now we were writing and staging dramas, a lot of dramas. And what happened was, one day, one night, I have a dream. Swami is in my dream, in an open car. He gives me Pada Namaskar. So in the morning, I was so hilarious. I thought, we are doing these dramas and things, Swami is blessing us for all that. And then we were happy at all. Strangely, the next night, my husband is having a dream. Same thing, Swami giving us Pada Namaskar. And then the very next business day, the doctor declared us pregnant. So Swami's words came true. And the child had come. Now, 3 months passed after the child became 3 months. My husband was registered in a PhD program, and the professor was I wouldn't say forcing, he was pressurizing him to go abroad, go to UK, go to Sri Lanka, do the research. You must do a lot of research in there. So he was pressurizing him. And we were students at the time, so we were not very much pushed to go anywhere. But because of this pressure, we started getting ready to go. The child is 3 months old. And what happened then? The country turned into civil war. People were murdered, people were burnt. It's not the sides we are talking about, it's what happened in the country. That happened, we couldn't move. We just couldn't move. Now that we had got the time, we thought, why not go to Puttaparthi and spend about 3 months there? And lo and behold, we ended up in Puttaparthi, and that trip, we had taken a lot of nectar, and we were intoxicated. That's in summary of that trip. So 3 months we were there. Now, there was an interview. I'll come to the interview after I tell you about the Annaprashanam. That's for the baby. She was the center of our communication with Swami. He would come, and when he came to give her Annaprashanam, the Annaprashanam meaning, I should explain that. That's the first solid feed for a baby in their life, which we get it done by priests. So Swami came up. I had all these things ready. He came and he put his finger in there, the thing that I was going to give the baby, or Swami was going to give the baby, and then took it and said, "What do you know? Do you know how to prepare this?" And a long lecture on the recipe in Telugu. I could just catch certain words, but it was a long recipe. So only the one, that's why. These are things I picked up. Only the one, is it? That's why. So he gave a recipe. Just put the milk somewhere. It was a whole long recipe. After Swami left, everyone behind was offering to do the prasad. Because, Swami had given the recipe. So anyway, to cut the long story short, the next day, hopefully I prepared it the way he said, with the help of a lady who was there, and Swami comes straight off and gives the baby the rice. And then it followed with a haircut by Swami. And you know how in those days it was, the way Swami does it. You have the pot in a water, in a small pot, and then and the scissors, and he cuts the hair, and then there's a hanky. He takes a handkerchief, cleans his hand, and then cleans the thing and puts it into the bowl, and he walks. So we were very, very privileged to have that. And Dharmini, do you want to come in just because I'm talking all the time? Yeah, just.
Well, I have nothing to say at this point because I didn't exist at that point. But the beauty in all of this is that for me, I don't recollect anything, obviously, because I was a 3-month-old baby. But by the time I came to my awareness, Swami was just part and parcel of my life. I knew nothing before or after. I don't even remember even in my teenage years having a discussion with my parents or arguing with them about, is Swami God? Who is Swami? Why should we worship him? The impact of all the things that he had bestowed on me as a child was really that connection that I had to this day in everything in my life. Swami was my guru, God and guide, without any question, right from the beginning. And that's how I see all of this. The other thing I feel as if he prepares us for is, as we can see from the experience, is that he comes to us. We think that we join the Sai fold or we find Swami, but in fact Swami finds us, and he finds us because he wills that we are at his feet. And that, you consider a privilege, and you consider as an immense protection right throughout. So for me, it's all of these experiences. Later in my life, I didn't have the interaction of him touching my head again or feeding me or any of that, but he became so innate and part and parcel of my life. It was just like my life breath. Swami became my life breath without any dispute.
And I can explain that too, because one of the things, apart from the Annaprashanam and the haircut and writing Om in the slate, that was another significant thing that he did for her. He had touched her head every time he came out. He had, and those times, early in the morning, at 2 o'clock, I am there with the 3-month-old baby on my lap. And at that time, first come, first served. So we are let in there. So almost every day it's front line. And every time he came out, he touched the baby's head. It became so many times, it's cheeky for me to say that, but in that cheekiness, I see that beauty when I say, once there was a time when I was even feeling lazy or lethargic to raise the child and do it again. It's that so many times that he did it. These are privileges, I suppose, in those days. Then coming back to the interview. So we were called for an interview, and we went in, and as usual, Swami, enna samacharam, he said, Swami can make earth into sky and sky into earth. Swami can do anything. And then he materializes a rain, and which goes around. Everyone sees it. And the significant thing about that interview, my mother was with me at the time when the interview was on. He suddenly turned to my mother and said, now it's enough, in Tamil. He said, it's enough now. Think about the children. It's time you think about God only. You must be strong enough. What's the meaning of this? You must forget about the children part of it. Now it's God and God's focus. So we were thinking why, after he inquired about my husband's study, job and general, but this was very significant. So we were just a bit surprised, but anyway, the thing finished, the interview finished, we came out, and then later, now there are other things that happened in that time when we were there for 3 months, but when we came back home in Australia, the very first thing was a phone call from UK where my brother was, my youngest brother, that he was admitted to hospital with a tumor in his brain, and he was very serious. Now we saw the significance of Swami. We don't need to talk about omniscient, omnipotent. It was just there, right, staring in the face. Out of all the people, he picks up my mother, and I think that was a transmission of strength to her to stand that horrible thing. My brother passed away later, but that was another significant thing that happened. Now shall we move on from there? Then we started going to Puttaparthi almost every 6 months. They become our second home. It became any holidays, anything, we are there in Puttaparthi. Right?
Yeah, I think the main thing here is that, as I said before, there was so much of, this physical interaction with Swami that I wasn't privy to, if you like, because of my unawareness. But the magic of Swami is that despite there being a lack, if you like, a lack of that, immediate interaction with him, there's a catch. There's a hook that he has on you. And part of that hook is what you experience as being part of the Sai fold. And that was bhajans. For me, it was going to the center every Sunday, even from when I was, 3 months old onwards. That's all I did on Sunday mornings, to the fact that, whenever Sunday came up, I couldn't think of anything else other than that Sunday morning was going for bhajan. To the extent that we had other mothers at the center telling their children, showing me as an example, saying, "Oh, look, Dharmini doesn't complain at waking up at 6 a.m. in the morning to come for Sunday morning bhajans. Why are you complaining?" And of course, their children would retort, "Well, Dharmini didn't have a choice. She was 3 months old, wrapped in a bassinet and just placed in front of the shrine. She comes because she has no choice." But the importance of that is that those activities that we get engaged in, and that too from a very young age, means that you get soaked in that sadhana. Because bhajans for me was the big hook. Like when we join the Sai organization, there's activities, there's lots of activities, and I look at it as almost like a school. What do we do as parents when a child is starting to, get to 5 or 6? You start putting them in dance class or in singing class, or you send them to soccer, so that you can see and mold and see what are their talents, what are the things that are going to motivate them to achieve things in life. And in the same way, we have all these things: bhajans, study circles, service activities, and all of these are a stage, a place for us that Swami has given us to hook onto a particular path of sadhana, to experience him. And for me, it was bhajans. Bhajans are nothing but bhajans. And because of that, it was something where I effortlessly was able to connect with Swami. To the extent that if I don't go for bhajans on Sunday mornings, it feels like, oh, I haven't had my recharge yet. So the magic in Swami and the way he works is that he presents these things, he connects you to these things so that you start looking inward and you start feeling a connection with him. You start feeling things beyond, that are just beyond, schooling. And then he starts to present himself, not only in darshan line, but he presents himself in your pathway of life. So what may seem like coincidences are far from that. The other major impact that I had was mainly Bal Vikas. And Bal Vikas I went through, obviously when I was from an age of that I could start Bal Vikas, but Mom was actually a Bal Vikas teacher when I was still in her tummy. So I in fact joke that my Bal Vikas classes started in her tummy. And you might want to talk about how you got into Bal Vikas.
Yeah, that's an important thing that I missed. When we set off to Puttaparthi from Australia, the centre chairperson said there's going to be the first world conference on Bal Vikas or human values. At the time it was called Bal Vikas. There's a massive conference and teacher training. And this chairperson said, "Now that you are there, do you want to attend?" I said, "Yes, of course." So the beauty of that conference, there have been so many conferences, so many teacher training, when I look back. But the beauty of that conference is Swami was the teacher. Swami was the trainer. Except for an exceptional, I think it was Jagdishan from Malaysia and someone else. Swami was the main lecturer. And it was straight from Swami, the training. And lo and behold, guess what? I got the certificate from his own hands, divine hands. And at this juncture, I would like to recall the things that were taught to us in one instance only, is that Swami always said, don't teach. You're not eligible to teach if you're not practicing what you are teaching. That stuck in my mind so much. And I would relate, just in the lighter way, an experience I had in trying to put into practice what Swami taught me. And miserably failed, but he got me in there. we went for when I was a Bal Vikas teacher, after the conference came back, and when I continued Bal Vikas training, one day and the children were all enthusiastic. I had very, very good children. They are now grown up and they have children themselves. Now, at a gathering, a social gathering you can say, but it was a Sai devotee's house who comes to the center. So, there was a gathering where there was a party-like thing, but we were all seated there and we are having conversations. Almost everyone was Sai devotee. And there was a discussion which ensued about a person in the organization. It was like what Swami talks about, talking about that person. So one person who was very clever in talking, in presenting, was on and on about this other person in the organization, and everyone was laughing, contributing. It turned out to be something like that. Now the host, the person whom the house belonged to, her daughter was a Bal Vikas student. I was quite conscious because that girl was serving tea and coffee and everything to the people. So, though I was bursting out into laughter, the way it was put, the way the person was talking about the other person, I wouldn't contribute for God. I know the child is there and the children were there. There were more children than that. I wouldn't contribute for the world. But when they said, I laughed. I was laughing. That's all I did. That was my contribution to the whole thing, which went on for about half an hour. And then we finished the talking. We were called for dinner. We went in, and this child came up to me. That was a demonstration of exactly what Swami teaches us. The child came up to me. She was about 9 years or 10 years, that sort of thing. She came up and said, Auntie, you said you should not talk ill about others. You should not talk about others, particularly in their absence. Mind you, that additional, in their absence. So I said, no, I never talked about anyone. You know what she said? But you laughed. So that was an eye-opener. So you can't get away. You can't get away from the children. You can't get away from Swami. There's no way of winning. You have to be strictly following what Swami says. And that's in all aspects of life.
Puttaparthi was like our holiday destination every single year, ever since I was born. Even one trip that we planned to not go to Puttaparthi or not India, and we specifically said, no, we're just going to London and coming back. That trip got cut short and we ended up going to Puttaparthi anyway. And that was one thing, right? But the message of him saying it's only Swami's will for him to be there, I experienced in one of the trips that I was fortunate to join. There was as I've said before, bhajans was like that's the way I connect with Swami. And so an opportunity came to go with a group. It was part of the inauguration of there was a statue of Swami that was being inaugurated in Chaitanya Jyoti. And everyone from around the world were being invited to come and do bhajans as part of those celebrations. And of course, as someone who sings bhajans, your ultimate benefit, if you like, is if you get to sing in his presence. And so I was pumped. I was like, this is fantastic. I was asked to play harmonium. I was also singing, and I thought, oh, absolutely. And I was at university. I was finishing my law degree. The date of the trip, however, was right in the middle of my semester end exams. And it's not unusual that people have gone and asked to do exams early. And that too, for this subject, it was a take-home exam. And, I had done it before, so I was quite confident. I wrote to the lecturer and I said, I have this one-in-a-lifetime opportunity. And one thing I must point out, in that particular moment, for some reason, I don't usually do it. But with this lecturer, I actually said, I'm going to Puttaparthi. I'm a Sai devotee. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to be able to sing in his presence. can you please let me do my exam early so that I can join the group? So I sent it, was very confident all will be fine. I got a reply from the lecturer, which took me aback. Not only did he say, I can't do the exam early, he then sent me a couple of links from the internet that had some adverse information about Swami. And he actually put down, you should really think about what kind of organization you're part of. Now, the interesting thing in this is I never usually talk about my being a Sai devotee in the course of my day-to-day activities outside the Sai organization. But to then get this response, I was really taken back. I was absolutely shattered. I thought, Swami, why are you doing this? And of course, a series of tears to Swami, crying and saying, why don't you want me there? Why give me this opportunity and not let me go? And then I thought, you know what? I can't do anything about it. The lecturer had taken an extra step to not even approve of what I was going to be doing in Puttaparthi. And then towards the time that I had asked to do the exam early, we got an email from the lecturer to the entire batch saying that I'm having to go on leave unexpectedly as I've been diagnosed with a terminal illness. Now, my hearing this, my heart stopped on the one sense, because I was praying to go to Puttaparthi, but not at the cost, not praying so much to cause some sort of ill will, if I can call it that, in my having some hand in that. And so anyway, we got that email. The replacement lecturer, I immediately got a handoff, and I said, I have this trip, can I do my exam early? This lecturer I had interacted with previously, and she said, yes, absolutely, do the take-home exam early and then you can go on your trip. So it was all fine. I got to do the exam. I got to go on the trip. Did I sing in front of Swami? No, I didn't sing in front of Swami, but he willed for me to be there. When I was on the trip, we received another email from this lecturer to the entire batch saying, apologies for the previous email. It appears that my diagnosis was a misdiagnosis. I have now returned to my teaching duties. I was completely over the moon, because I could see that Swami had orchestrated for such a small thing, right? I mean, this is, Parat Brahman. He's looking after the entire world in all living beings. And this one little incident with this one, pining to be there, to do a particular thing, it seemed to me his hand was all over this, orchestrating this huge drama so that I could go on this Parthi trip. The contents of this might seem really minute, about being able to go on a trip. I've been on many trips before and I've been many trips after. But this was one of those trips I never forgot. Not because I sang in front of Swami,
There were
but
many countries taking part.
But because this unfolded the way it did. And I even questioned, maybe part of that drama, I'm sure the lecturer, when he came back, would have noticed that I got to do the exam early and left. And I wonder whether Swami, that was one of Swami's hooks for that particular lecturer as well. That's something that I just ponder about. What's the point in all of this, right? He gives us so much. He works in, big ways and in small ways. And, what is the point of this? So before we, I guess, get to that, you want to talk about the 3 months that we had?
Another
3 months.
Another 3 months.
With me. I must say that again.
Yes,
it was
right.
with me.
And what happened here is I was appointed deputy chair of the Central Council, and there was allocated seating in Puttaparthi, a portion of certain members of the organization, and I didn't know anything about it. I was going on as in the office demanded, and one day, one lady said, "What are you doing here? There is a seating there where you can go and sit, like how the men sit in the veranda. There is a seating here for officials of the organization." And then she paved the way, and I got a seating there, and either first row or the second row. It was almost every day. It was just beautiful. I can't go into detail all the experiences we had then. But when this was going on, when we came back to Australia, and I was nagging my husband one day, and I said, if I leave this position at some point, or if I had to, I won't get this privilege of seeing Swami every day and Padanamaskar and materializing Vibhuti. I said, why not we just leave the whole thing and go and be there for 3 months? And that 3 months was the standard for us. Whenever we go, sit there for 3 months. Right. So why not we go? Can I go and spend 3 months in Puttaparthi? Because the minute I leave the position or something happens, I lose that privilege of seeing Swami, Avatar. My husband didn't say a word. He was silent because he know if I leave, he has to look after the practice alone, on his own. It's not an easy job. So he kept silent. Every time I said it, he kept silent. I gave up. And then suddenly my daughter resigns her job. Let her talk about it separately. She resigns her job and she comes back and says, now I have the time. Why not, Amma? We go to Puttaparthi and be there for a while.
And can I just add, in that 3 months, so I was going through a particularly stressful time and I just didn't want to do my job. I couldn't cope with the stress. So I just wanted to take some time off. And I asked my employer, can I have 3 months off? And they said to me, no, you can't. So I said, fine. I said, okay, fine, I'll resign. So I resigned. And when I resigned, they said, hang on, we won't accept the resignation. Have 6 months leave of absence and then, take some time off and come back. And so lo and behold, we had 3 months again to go and see and be with Swami. And it was just, and I significantly say my mom and I, because, having that time in Puttaparthi with mom was really special. I mean, starting my journey with her in her lap at 3 months and then being able to be with her again, not knowing that the 3 months that we spend would in fact be the last time that we would see Swami physically.
Which we never realized.
Didn't realize.
I thought of leaving the position or something happening to the position. I never thought for a second that Swami is going to leave and he is giving us the opportunity of being with him again. And also, drinking the nectar of it. And just on the lighter note, I would say, I'm supposed to be talkative. Always, all the time, talk too much. Against what Swami says. Yeah, by nature, talkative. But there's one instance where I cannot talk and Swami puts a block on my mouth, is that whenever Swami is right in front of me, in many instances, I can't open my mouth. I can't. My tongue goes and gets stuck inside and I'm looking at him.
We call it the mute button for Amma. And I'm sure my dad is wondering, how does Swami do that? Putting her on mute. Yeah, so on one instance, so just going to that point, Swami actually in one darshan was standing there, materialized Vibhuti, and was standing there to give it to Amma. And I must have been about maybe, 9 or 10 years old. And she was just, mute. I just did not know. I mean, this is the impact of Swami's darshan. So I had to physically raise her arm and I was like, Amma, Swami is giving you Vibhuti. He's giving you Vibhuti. Hold your hand up. And, it's to that extent, like that fleeting moment he comes by. It happens to all of us. But it's a special mute button that happens with
Always it happens. And just to conclude, and also just one other thing which I'd like to share, that last 3 months we ended up with Swami, we were sitting there pining for him. That's what happened, because Swami's health, he was getting frail and he would not come very often. He would come, but he'll come very late and go very late. And sometimes you wonder whether Swami will come out. So I sat there on the first line and looked at the hall from where he comes out, and I was praying intensely for hours. Swami, please come, please come. I got so desperate. I said, even if you don't come near me, please come. At least we'll have your darshan. And surprisingly, after, I'm sure so many devotees would have prayed for that. And he comes out and he comes to the lady's side And now my heart starts pumping. Oh my God, did I tell him if it doesn't matter if you don't come near me? It starts going. Swami goes inside, gives darshan, comes back in the chair, comes back, straight comes to me, stands in front, not stand, he was seated in the chair, he's right in front of me. He was looking at me and laughing. And I could see the words coming out of my mouth. Then, I can't talk, right? In front of Swami. It was thinking, oh my God, because I did say such a thing.
Yeah.
He came right in front of me and started laughing at a comedian like me. And
so just to conclude, why does all this happen, right? I mean, there are so many different stories, as Mom said before. Each person's story is tailored to them. Swami knows exactly what and when to give to us. In trying times, it's that patience and it's that surrender. And all of these experiences are like little seeds he sows inside to say, remember me, remember that I'm always there. Just keep saying my name and I will be there with you all the time. We'll just conclude with a quick bhajan, just as an offering for Swami before we finish. Sai Ram, Sai Ram, Sai Ram bhajo. Sai Ram, Sai Ram, Sai Ram bhajo. Sadguru Sai Ram Naam bhajo. Sadguru Sai Ram Naam bhajo. Sai Ram, Sai Ram, Sai Ram bhajo. Sai Ram, Sai Ram, Sai Ram bhajo. Sai Ram, Sai Ram, Sai Ram bhajo. Allah Malik Sai Ram bhajo. Allah Malik Sai Ram bhajo. Buddha Mahavir Sai Ram bhajo. Buddha Mahavir Sai Ram bhajo. Yeshu Pita Prabhu Sai Ram bhajo. Yeshu Pita Prabhu Sai Ram bhajo. Sai Ram, Sai Ram, Sai Ram bhajo. Sai Ram, Sai Ram, Sai Ram bhajo. Sai Ram, Sai Ram, Sai Ram bhajo. Sai Ram.
Sai Ram, everyone. On behalf of all the Sai devotees in Australia, I would like to take this opportunity to express our sincere appreciation to Sisters Shanthini Gnanakaran and Sathya Dharmini Gnanakaran for an inspiring session this evening. We are truly grateful for their time and efforts they have taken to join us and share their lovely and memorable experiences. Thank you and Jai Sai Ram.
Jai Ganesha, Jai Ganesha, Jai Ganesha, Rakshama. देवी भवानी माँ, जय साई भवानी माँ, देवी भवानी माँ, साई भवानी माँ, देवी भवानी माँ, जय साई भवानी माँ, देवी भवानी माँ, जय साई भवानी माँ। दया करो साई माँ, कृपा करो
భగవంతుడి నుంచినే వచ్చాం, భగవంతుని దగ్గరికే చేరిపోవాలి.
Because we are from God, we should be back to God.
ఇంతమంది ఈ హాల్లో చేరారు.
So many assembled here.
ఎక్కడి నుంచి వచ్చారు?
Where do you come
జర్మనీ,
from?
జపాను, ఇటలీ, ఫ్రాన్స్, ఈ అన్ని దేశాల నుంచి వచ్చారు.
You belong to different countries all over the world and you are
అయితే
here.
ఇక్కడ ఎంత ఆనందంగా ఉండినప్పటికీ తెచ్చిన డబ్బు అయిపోయేటప్పటికి తిరిగి వెళ్ళిపోతారు.
Though you are in a blissful state, when once the money is over, you have to go back.
ఆ వీసా అయిపోయేటప్పటికే వెళ్ళిపోవాల్సి వస్తుంది.
The moment visa expires, you must return.
కానీ దగ్గర ఉండడానికి వీలు కాదు.
It's not possible to be here always.
అదే రీతిగానే
Likewise,
మనం టెంపరీగా కొంతకాలం ఉండిపోవటం కాదు.
it's not like a temporary stay.
ఈ పర్మనెంట్ వీసా సంపాదించాలి.
You should have a permanent visa.
అది ఏ గ్రేస్.
That is God's grace, is permanent visa.
లవ్
That you can get it through love and love alone.
ప్రేమను సంపాదించుకుంటే పర్మనెంట్ గా అయిపోతుంది.
When once you have love, you'll have permanent visa.
కనుక ప్రేమ స్వరూపులారా,
Embodiments of love.
మీరందరి ఎందుకు ప్రేమ ఉంటుండాలి.
There is love in every
ఆ
one of you.
ప్రేమను అభివృద్ధి పరచుకోండి.
Develop that
ఆ
love.
ప్రేమను 10 మందికి పంచుకోండి.
Share it with the
ఆ
people.
ప్రేమను 10 మందితో అనుభవించండి.
You also experience with your fellow
ఈ
people.
ప్రేమ అనేటువంటిది
This love.
వన్ వే ట్రాఫిక్ కాదు.
This love is not one-way traffic.
గివ్ అండ్ టేక్. ఇన్ఫర్మేషన్ మాత్రమే తీసుకుంటున్నారు కానీ నో ట్రాన్స్ఫర్మేషన్.
But many students think of information, but there's no transformation.
ట్రాన్స్ఫర్మేషన్ చాలా అవసరమైనటువంటిది.
Transformation is very important.
దేనివల్ల ఈ ట్రాన్స్ఫర్మేషన్ మనకు వస్తుంది?
How can it happen?
సర్వీస్.
It will happen only through
ది
service.
బెస్ట్ వే టు లవ్ గాడ్ ఇస్ టు లవ్ ఆల్ సర్వర్. ప్రేమకు ఒక్క హద్దే లేదు.
Love has no limit.
ప్రేమకు ఒక బర్తే లేదు.
Love has no birth.
ప్రేమకు ఒక డెత్తే లేదు.
Love has no death.
Swami Sathya Sai Hare Bhaktana Samrakshaka Bhaktana Samrakshaka Parvareshwara Om Jai Jagadish Hare Shashivara भवन्तु समस्तलोकाः सुखिनो भवन्तु समस्तलोकाः